What's up, everybody? Welcome to Down and Dirty with Michael Julian. I'm your host, Michael Julian, and on this show, we're getting raw, real, and leaving no stone unturned. Each week, I sit down with some truly remarkable people who have overcome immense challenges and adversity in their lives. Whether it was childhood trauma, discrimination, mental health struggles, or any other obstacle thrown their way, my guests aren't just survivors, they're warriors who took their pain and turned it into power. They'll share their unfiltered stories and the life lessons that helped shape them into the forces they are today. So get comfortable because we're about to get down and dirty. You'll hear firsthand how our darkest moments can unexpectedly light the path towards our greatest growth and success. Let's dive in and prepare to feel inspired. How you doing today, brother?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. It's so good to have you here.
Can't wait.
Yes, we're going to have fun and it's going to go fast.
Let's do it.
Let me start with a little bio that I prepared here to let the listeners and viewers know a little something about my man, Caleb Gilbert.
Oh, boy.
Caleb is the president of White Glove Protection Group and brings with him over 2 decades of full-time experience in executive protection. I have to read this because there's so much, and I cut out half of it. Caleb is currently a member of the International Protective Security Board of Directors, and his global experience spans over 51 countries and nearly every region of the United States. Caleb's career has been marked by highly demanding assignments, including the creation of multiple teams from the ground up, director roles for Fortune 200 companies, and a private family office. Caleb's operational experience includes close protection roles for A-list celebrities, ultra high net worth individuals, and Fortune 200 corporate protection teams. Caleb is an active volunteer with the ASIS, or ASIS International, Executive Protection Community, where he is currently the vice chair and contributes significantly to the initiatives aimed at women in protection, mentorship, and EP leadership development for the EP community. Now, one thing that I don't see in your bio is maybe I'm over giving you too much credit, but weren't you kind of sort of one of the pioneers of covert protection, or maybe it was existed before, but you took it to the next level or something? I don't know. I just remember I didn't know anything about covert protection until I started hearing you talk about it, and then you built a team and blah, 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 blah. So frame this for us so I don't, invalidate anybody that might have done this prior to you. Yeah. But what was your role in that? And then we'll get started.
Definitely. Well, there had been protective surveillance assignments, which were typically in Europe. It was a lot of short-term, more surveillance assignments. But we had the first private sector 100% covert protection team. It was an extremely large team that was tasked with maintaining close protection, but not looking like we were doing it. And it literally came into my head one day when I was talking to my chief security officer, and we were talking about the struggles that we had with our close protection team, and we had surveillance detection teams at the time. And I was like, well, why don't we take and create something new? And so started working on the concept, ended up with an initial proposal, to my CSO and saying, hey, let's take all these things. Let's take EMT, counter surveillance, surveillance detection, close protection, all of those with a quick reaction force, because it's Silicon Valley, you can't look like, but when you're mitigating a sizable threat, you need to have some assets in place. And so incredible journey. My team was actually the one that came up with the term Cove Pro. We took covert and protection, put it together, have the trademark on that to this day. And it was a long, fun journey.
Now, obviously, there's going to be a lot of listeners and watchers that don't know anything about the executive protection industry. And my show is not supposed to be about executive protection, but so many of my friends with fascinating stories are in this world because that's the world I'm in.
Bunch of characters.
Yeah, they are a bunch of characters. That is for sure. Can you just quickly highlight with the definition of Cove Pro?
Yeah. So covert protection is providing protection within proximity to be able to actually mitigate an attack on principle without looking as if you're the big thug in the room, So the difference between, there's a lot of nuances, especially with the different government backgrounds, and the terms are used loosely between SD and surveillance detection, counter surveillance, and the covert protection. So basically what we did was we clearly defined the differences between each of those. So surveillance detection is the process of identifying if somebody is doing surveillance on, one
Your
of your sites or
principal.
your principal,
Yeah.
right? Counter surveillance is the act of actually countering. You've identified the surveillance. Now you're countering that. So you're watching, the whoever's doing the surveillance, right? Covert protection is using the same tradecraft that they use in the clandestine world to fit into the environment of your protectee without showing your intention to be there is in a protective capacity. So we would be in Silicon Valley, coffee shops all over the place, dinners all over the place, events all over the place with our teams in place. And our individuals were able to blend into that environment, look like they were a part of the normal Silicon Valley fixtures and not necessarily be identified as security.
Okay. So the art of surveillance and protection without being detected.
And protection, with the emphasis on maintaining proximity to be able to mitigate an actual attack.
Okay.
That's the big difference.
Yeah. That is a great definition.
Extremely hard to do.
Okay, good. I love that. Yeah, I would imagine it's definitely a skill, a skill set. Okay, so to give perspective to our relationship and why you're here, before we go into much of your life and so forth, you and I have been friends for I think 20 years.
20 years.
We met doing protection after Hurricane Katrina down in the Gulf.
Correct.
And I was running one team, you were running another team. Our teams came together after, in between something or whatever. You and I kind of hit it off. And one thing I will say about Caleb Gilbert is you are a man that stays in touch with people. I'm terrible at that. But you would every few months, we met, we became friends. Every few months, I'd get a call. Hey, buddy, how's it going? Just checking in. What's going on? And I actually learned that from you because I used to think, wow, that's really cool. I mean, I'm nobody, this guy, just one of many guys he met in the Gulf, but he's staying in touch. He's keeping this relationship alive because I would probably have just, I'm going on with my life. I would have probably never thought about it. And that's bad for me. And that's a shame on me for not being smarter and better at nurturing relationships. So you would do that every few months and I'd be like, man, that's really cool. We'd catch up. And I believe we got closer because I admired and respected that about you. And I personally learned that about you. And I am now better at it sometimes than others. But I think I learned that from you, from your example, which I think is really cool. So, okay, now after that, we're talking, and you're living in Washington at the time, and you said, hey, I'd kind of like to move to California and do the EP thing down there because it's a whole lot more client-rich environment, obviously, than Seattle or wherever in Washington. And I said, well, dude, come on down. You can fricking take a room in my house. And you moved down. Yep. And you slept in this little bitty room. And you drove to Hollywood every single day. You got a job working for a I don't know where they're
Halls
at.
and Walls.
Yeah, I don't know where they were at. The company's at now. I haven't heard much about them, but at the time they had a lot of celebrities. You got on with them. I should probably let you do the talking, but I'm just going to frame it and then let you take it from there.
Yeah.
I'm leading up to the point I want to make. You would drive 2 hours to Hollywood or Beverly Hills or wherever your client was. You'd work a 12-hour shift. You would drive 2 hours back. You'd get 4 hours sleep. You'd wake up and you'd do it again.
For
day
years.
after day after day. And you worked some of the biggest stars in Hollywood as a brand new guy in EP in California. Now, how much EP had you done? We'll get to your education in EP. How much EP had you done, say, in Washington prior to that?
Well, I'd been full-time on a detail prior to that. So that's where I got my initial international experience. That's why I got my initial close protection experience, But I think the big focus was on progressing, So when I first started working those details in Hollywood, I was guarding dumpsters. I was guarding, the back of award shows. I was, the outer perimeter, if you will.
Putting your time in the barrel as we all should.
100%. I would work 36 hours straight sometimes because, I'd work a 12-hour shift for one, company call up and say, hey, we need somebody to cover down on this, agent called out. So then I would work 36 hours straight, get that 4 hours of sleep you're talking about, turn around, do the same thing again.
I remember that. In fact, I have mentioned you at multiple conferences I spoke at about EP and that sort of thing. And I always referred to you as the hardest working guy in EP because you drive 2 hours, work a shift. Somebody would call out, you'd work a double, you'd drive back 2 hours, get 4 hours sleep, and then do it all over again. And that just boggled me. I honestly don't have the
thank goodness for youth.
That's true. You were a young man. You were 23 when I met you?
Yeah. My mid-20s throughout the majority of that entire time. And I mean, it was obviously exhausting, but in my head, I had this goal of where I wanted to go. And I knew that my competence was being judged every time, whether I answered that phone or not. In the contract game, if you don't answer the phone and the next person does answer the phone, guess what? You missed your opportunity. So I didn't say no to anybody. If I wasn't in the middle of a committed detail, I would say, hey, I can't make it there until I'm off shift in 3 hours, but I'll head there right afterwards. They knew that I would do whatever it took to be able to fulfill whatever the assignment was. And that was the foundation for my reputation.
Yeah. And you and I have had many, many fun and one challenging experience when we bought a gym together.
Right.
That was interesting. And over the next 20 years, but let's go back to the beginning. So let's start with, give me the origin story. Where'd Caleb come from and where did he go from there?
Simple kid from Spokane, Washington. I started out very simple life, great family, awesome parents, amazing siblings. Grew up, normal like anybody else, except we were homeschooled. We were privately educated. I never went to public school, my entire life. In fact, when I was 13, I decided that, I want to be able to buy my own Nike socks because all my friends had Nike socks. And, we would literally get a pair. I don't know if you remember Payless Shoe Source.
Of course.
But Payless Shoe Source, they would have their tube socks. And I remember once a year, my grandma would buy us these tube socks and they'd give half to my brother and half to me. And that was our socks for the year.
Yeah. A 12 pack.
The big old long ones that went up to your knees. Well, I wanted shorter ones that, didn't look so goofy around my little ankles,
Yeah.
And so I wanted to buy Nike socks, but my parents were hardworking, good people. My dad made $5 an hour, all throughout my childhood. And, his income just didn't sustain that. And so my brother and I were like, hey, we're going to go out and work. And so we went out and started mowing lawns. Well, by the time I was 13, I had about 25, 30 lawns that I was mowing.
How old were you when you started mowing lawns?
11 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
So work ethic is definitely something you started very, very early.
Definitely. And investing in your future as well, because I didn't have any money. So it went to a garage sale, bought one of those old rotary motors without a motor with anything. And that's what started it.
Oh, the rotary push lawn
mowers, old school, right? The ones where you sharpen the blades.
Yeah.
No motor.
Yeah.
And that's what started it, right? And then I didn't have anywhere to dispose of the lawn clippings. And so as I worked my way up with different levels of equipment, then, I found out I had to buy a truck and a trailer. I had to get somebody to drive that because I was still, a teenager. And so being able to work through those different challenges in my life taught me, that you need to invest in the future, invest in the people around you, so that you can progress. By the time I was 13, I was like, I'm done with school. I hate academics. It was not something that synced with me. I absolutely hated math. I can remember one day trying to work on math problems and it just did not work,
Yeah.
So I literally checked out and academics was no longer part of my life.
So you essentially quit school.
I was
13 years old.
100% mentally checked out. I tried to do assignments every now and then, but I was done.
Well, I know the stories of a lot of very successful people, and so that does not surprise me about you. The surprising thing is, and I don't want to give away too much of the later story, but where you came from and where you stopped with education, and then when you picked up and where you went after that is astounding. And I'm not going to let that cat out of the bag yet. I want you to tell that when the time comes. So 13 checked out. You've already got the entrepreneurial spirit, and you got this landscaping essentially, whatever, lawn cutting business.
Safe Lawn Care.
Okay, I like it. Okay,
incorporated in 1991.
Did you really incorporate?
Oh, for sure.
How old were you?
11.
Oh, but you weren't actually incorporated.
We had a business license.
Okay, well, you were a business. You were a bona fide business. Okay, not registered with the Secretary of State, but still.
It was a little different in the early 90s.
Okay, all right. Then what happens?
So worked my way through. Started moving on. There was a search and rescue school opportunity that my brother had gone through before me, and it was actually when I was 15 and a half years old that I ended up heading out to this search and rescue school. And it was up in Peninsula, Michigan and Florida, doing underwater search and recovery diving, just basically like a prep for going in the military. At the time, I wanted to either be a Navy SEAL or be in a motors unit with law enforcement because I really liked motorcycles.
Yeah, sure.
And so I was, weighing the two options and went to this school. While we were there, we met these guys that had worked in corporate security. And they're like, oh, yeah, get to travel the world, carry guns, make a decent salary. You should check it out. And I was like, how does somebody get into this?
Where'd you meet these guys?
In Miami. We were doing the underwater search and recovery diving training.
Okay.
And met these guys literally in a park. Like we were doing physical fitness in the mornings. They were doing physical fitness in the mornings. And, just happened to hit it off with them.
Now that is so cool. And I want to stop for a second. You literally happened to talk to some guys in a park and that introduction or meeting those people completely changed the trajectory of your entire life.
100%.
That is, to me, so amazing. And I guess a really good lesson for anybody listening. You never know when an opportunity, well, look, opportunities are created. They can drop in your lap maybe, or you could have never spoken to those guys and your life would have been completely different. This show is about people learning from things, from adversity, from challenges, overcoming them. And I want people to always, in every single show, take something away that will enrich their life. That's number one, is that you never know when an opportunity is going to present itself. You have got to take that opportunity, and you never know who you're talking to might change your life. So go from there.
Yeah. So basically I asked them, where do you go for this training? And they're like, well, if you're on the East Coast, you go to EPI. If you're on the West Coast, you go to Aspen, Colorado to Executive Security International.
ESI.
ESI. Those were the two schools at the time. Keep in mind this is late 90s. And so I was like, all right, I'll start checking it out, And so I called ESI I forget exactly which year it was, but started talking to them. It was when they were still doing the college credits for participating in ESI. I was like, oh, wow, that's awesome. But I couldn't afford the $10,000 to attend at the time. I had zero money in my name. My parents, were hardworking, but didn't have that kind of money to contribute. And so I ended up starting to work in different security roles. I had worked some security before that, just parking lot stuff, and then progressed, just different security officer roles. Ended up selling the landscaping business and using that money to pay for ESI. So then I started the distance education. While I was working at a 5-star hotel, I was able to work my way through that distance education, start getting that through. And then in 2002 or 2003, I forget. But I actually went to the 30 days of residence training. Left there with $43 to my name. And that's, when I transitioned initially to Northern California, started trying to network there and get in touch with different people, and then would work strike security, any contract work that I could pick up. Ended up picking up a full-time detail, being able to travel with them. But getting on that detail was even fun because they had left. It was at the ESI conference. There's an annual alumni conference, back in the day. And it was, 60, 70 people at these conferences back then. And far different than our conferences now.
Yeah, 800 people.
Yeah. But on one of the tables, there was a piece of paper that, was, hey, looking for agents, to work in California, XYZ. And so I cold called, just based on that note that was on the table. And I said, hey, I don't know anything about you, don't know anything about your detail, but, I am willing to do whatever it takes to get on your detail. I want to build my experience and I'm willing to do whatever it takes, and he's like, oh, that's great. You don't have any experience. We'll call you when I can. I was like, hey, if you put me on a trip, you don't need to pay me. I'll pay my own food. I can't afford to fly there. They were headed to India at the time and they were looking for support. I was like, I can't afford to pay for my flight. Otherwise I would pay for it, but you don't have to pay me anything. I'll eat protein bars the whole time. I don't care. I just want to, be able to get that experience, build up my resume, build up my professional abilities. Right. We said no that time, but he remembered it, and
you probably stayed in touch with him and called him every 6 months.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It was 3 months later that he called me and said, "Hey, we have something in Orlando coming up. Come on out." And that was my big break. That was my big lift. That director he passed away earlier this year, and it was kind of fun to in the most sombering way possible, see the people that were around him that still kept in touch with him until he passed away, and see everybody that was there in the beginning when I first started. A lot of the same people in the same game, that have had a lot of progression since then as well.
This is why you're still living in Spokane?
This is why I'm still living in Spokane.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the late 90s at this point?
No, this is 2000. This is 2003. 2002, 2003.
Okay, so that's right before we met.
Yep.
Got it.
Yep. Years immediately before we met.
Okay.
Yeah. I had just been working random security jobs. I'd worked some security in Montana. I'd worked for a 5-star hotel in Spokane, just uniform, plain security.
Okay. And then Hurricane Katrina comes along.
Yes.
And you end up on a team. I end up taking a team down there. We had some pretty fun times. One of the funnest times of my life, to be honest with you, was running a team for a straight month right after Hurricane Katrina.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we were in Louisiana, Texas, and not Tennessee, Mississippi. And you were working, doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. And then you go back home. Now, what happens after you leave the Gulf after Katrina?
So I went back home and I was trying to decide what direction I was going to go in. I considered, joining a larger, EP company, applied everywhere I could, looking at all options. But at the time I was like, really Hollywood is where it's at.
Is this, you applied for Gavin DeBecker, did you not?
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
Now, was that before you moved down or after you moved down and stayed with me?
That was before.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, that was before. That was in my Northern California days, And
if I'm not mistaken, well, you should tell this, and this is no ding to Gavin because he's a brilliant businessman. As I recall, you got accepted, but the money was not good for entry level.
No, actually, my buddy with no experience got accepted. I did not get accepted. I went through the entire interview process, physical fitness test, went through the whole process and was not offered a position,
Well, I will say, Gavin, you fucked up because this is the hardest working dude in executive protection. I will be honest with you.
But I'll tell you that taught me a key lesson, because obviously I microanalyze everything, in life, especially when I'm not awarded a position that I'm pursuing, and it worked out, in my favor, but what it did for me is it taught me that, when you're applying for a position, make sure that you're prepared in every way for that position. Because I don't know why I didn't get offered a position with Gavin DeBecker, but I do know that there were severe deficiencies in my professional life that I knew I needed to work on.
So you learned from that rejection that you needed to get better, 100%. And that was your driver.
100%.
Love that. Lesson number 2. Okay.
Definitely.
Moving on. So then what happened?
So then after, my buddy got accepted, I did not get accepted. I was like, all right, time to move on, figure out what the next opportunity is. Started just working short-term contracts, strike work, just anything really that I could at the time.
Entry level stuff.
Entry level all the way. We're talking $150, $200 for a 12-hour shift, traveling, staying in some of the worst hotels you can imagine in, the armpit of the world, and, but it taught me a lot of things that I didn't even realize at the time, like being able to, stay fresh, being able to stay consistent, like all those little lessons of discipline and being able to, show up on time when you don't feel like it, when the money's not really that good. I could have been making more money at home, but I wouldn't have been working in the direction that I wanted to work.
Okay, so here we go. If I can point out lesson number 3, you decided to do what you were passionate about, and you were fine working and starting from the ground level, no matter what it took, even if you didn't get paid, because, and I wrote this down, you had a goal.
Definitely.
You had a goal, you set your sights on it, and you decided nothing was going to stand in your way. Is that accurate?
100%.
Okay.
100%.
I love that. Okay. What else?
Yeah. You look over the trajectory of my life. There have been several key intersections that, I've had this goal. I've had milestones in my life, but there has been intersections in my life, CovPro being one of them. I could go left or I could go right. And my choice, split-second decisions based on long-term goals, fundamentally has rewritten the path that I took in my life. CoPro. Went into my boss's office, presented this PowerPoint plan. I told my CSO, I was like, I think that this could be an amazing addition to our protective program. And he said, all right, I'll give you this, but you're the detail leader right now. That's a good position. If you want to start this program, I'm going to hire another detail leader and your job is gone. So if you don't make this program work,
You're out.
You're out. You're done.
Do or die.
Do or die. And I was like, well, let me think about it. He's like, no, decide right now. And he was testing whether or not I truly believed in it.
Yeah.
But in my head, I was like, this can work. I know that we can make this work. It's not going to be easy, but we can make this work. And I put my money where my mouth was, and fundamentally worked through, so many challenges to be able to make that happen. So the goal, staying at the forefront, has literally provided that gut instinct in my life that has paid off time and time again.
Love that. I love that. Okay. So now are we up to when you moved?
Yes.
Okay. So after rejection from Gavin, had you already been offered the job by the company that you ended up working for, doing all the celebrities before you moved down?
No, I had nothing.
You moved down.
I moved down. You said, I'll introduce you to some people.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, all right, cool. Cold called everybody. And I think I started working for $12 an hour in, what was that, 2005?
2005.
Yeah. And I think it was $12 an hour working residential security. Quickly bumped up from there.
No, 2006. I'm sorry for the correction.
It was Christmas of 2005 that I moved down.
Yep.
That's right. So early 2006. Yeah. Because I remember I worked, New Year's Eve. I worked every holiday for the last couple of decades.
Sure.
But my point is the money was crap. The money was ridiculous.
But the experience is what you needed on that resume to get the ball rolling.
Exactly. And I knew that that's what I needed. I needed to round off my deficiencies as a professional to be able to get into the positions that I wanted to be in.
Okay. All right. You moved down. You apply for the job in LA.
I applied for probably 20 jobs in LA. I think 2006 and 2007 on my taxes, there were 29 different agencies that I worked for in one capacity or another.
But it's not because you were jumping from one to the other. You were an independent working for multiple companies at the same time, which is very normal in this business.
Very standard, especially in LA.
Yeah.
Especially in LA. One person says we have this, I had my consistent gigs throughout that period of time, but I definitely filled in for a lot, different award shows, different movie sets, different different residential gigs, a lot of that. But throughout that, was what was sprinkling the transition from, night residential to day residential to, close protection, short-term assignments to, embedded assignments, longer term periods of time to, travel, things like that, so I progressed and I learned, A, what I liked, B, what I didn't like, but also what the core competencies were that I needed to develop. When I was able to get my CCW, that definitely was a catalyst for a lot better gigs. because I was able to
That's right.
transition.
I remember you got your CC.
Yeah.
I think I helped you out with that.
I think you did. 100%.
Yeah, that worked out well.
Yeah, for sure.
Right on. Okay, now I want to get up to a part that I'm excited about because you and I won't mention names because we don't really do that. But there's one name I'm going to ask you if I have permission to, who I'm talking about. My favorite metal rocker of all time. I can leave it at that, or you can let me say his name. You tell me.
I mean, all
right. If you're not comfortable with it,
it's been 18 years, but
well, then I'm going to do it, and then you can be mad at me. So you worked the residential security team for Ozzy Osbourne
back in the day
while they were filming the Osbournes, correct?
Yeah.
Now, Ozzy, if you know me, is the godfather of metal, and I love him, and I've seen him 14 times, and I met him, and I talked to him, and got pictures with him. So here you're living with me, protecting my metal god, who I absolutely loved. And I was so jealous because, I had my own company. I was doing my own thing. I even told you, hey, tell your boss I'll work it cheap.
Moonlight.
Just so I can hang out with the guy that I love.
Right.
And I know we're not supposed to fanboy, but I do. Yeah. I do. I'll admit it. Anyway, and then after that, you worked so many other A-lister actors and actresses, like people that everybody loves.
Yeah.
So you got a tremendous amount of experience in the celebrity world, which is different than the corporate world, which is different than the disaster response world. The celebrities, I'm going to ask you a question here in a second. Well, I'll just do it now. Tell me a horror story, obviously without saying any names, of what was the worst situation you've ever been in with a client? And I know when it comes, it's got to have been a celebrity because celebrities can be so high maintenance. Do you have a good story?
Oh, for sure. One that comes to mind is a A-list female celebrity that we had a active pursuer at the time, a stalker,
person of interest, stalker.
Yep.
Well, they were beyond person of interest. They were a stalker.
100% active stalker,
Got it.
Very active.
Okay,
and she had a sizable house in Hollywood Hills. She had a party there with a bunch of other A-list celebrities, where no security was allowed, but for 3 days, they partied with this toga party. And I was asked to provide security because, she was the only one. I was the only one that she was comfortable having on site.
Okay.
So for 3 days, I got to, nourish my sustenance with Red Bull without sleeping, without really, any breaks or anything, trying to actively protect her from herself in most instances.
Yeah.
Without falling asleep or doing something stupid, And I don't know if you have ever seen a bunch of A-lister celebrities party in Hollywood for 3 days straight, but it gets kind of crazy.
Yeah. It gets real crazy, especially because most of them haven't slept for those 3 days.
Exactly.
And just for our non-EP people, the three things in executive protection we try and protect our principals from. Yes, outside danger,
of course,
whatever. Medical issues, because we're right there to take care of them, and then themselves, and protecting someone from themselves, especially when they're your client and they're the ones paying the bill and they're the ones that tell you what they can and cannot do.
Yep.
Can be very, very difficult. And it's a fine line between saying, wait, you're paying me to protect you, but you're doing something you're refusing to let me protect you from.
Right.
That's dicey.
Right. Yeah. And remember, this is in the heyday of, a lot of celebrities doing a lot of crazy things, and all of these crazy celebrities were in this one property for an extended period of time, so it was a challenge for me to, try to be the medic in the room, getting them water to, keep them hydrated. While, maintaining my personal privacy in the middle of a toga party and maintaining, that professional distance, as, I'm the protector, you're the protectee. Very challenging to say the least.
So is that as deep as you want to go into that story, or is there
probably?
Okay,
probably.
Right,
yeah.
Well, then while we're on that, what was your favorite, most memorable moment with a principal or on this job?
Oh boy, there've been so many. One A-list celebrity. I remember, similar situation to where there was an active pursuer, a stalker. We'd go hiking in Santa Monica Mountains all the time. And we'd be hiking, and she would see a caterpillar or see whatever. And I was just like, everybody thinks that she's this big celebrity. And literally, she's sitting here talking to me for 15 minutes about how cool this caterpillar is, just real as the day is long. To me, that was like, all right, I'm in the middle of Fakeville with all these fake people. And, there's a sincere individual that everybody thinks is, this huge movie star, and it's just another human being.
They're just people, man.
Yeah.
And they have the same stupid shit that we deal with, same insecurities,
100%.
all of that. And when you scratch past that surface, and some of those surfaces are thicker and more scarred and more interesting than others, they're all people underneath.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember one A-list celebrity went to this award show, and, he could not get his bow tie right. I was like, take it off, dude. Took it off. I retied it, put it on, and he's like, man, you make me look good.
Well, and as an EP guy, that's a good thing, because you're going to have job security.
Exactly.
Because they're going to want you making them look good all the time.
Yeah.
All right. So you do the celebrity thing. You're doing RST. Where do you go from there?
So from there, I honestly was at the point in my career to where I was like, all right, I'm working all these contract gigs. I have my steady gigs, but I'm still not a full-time employee anywhere. And so I was like, I need to find something that is more stable. And so I started looking at positions, got hired on one detail with a venture capitalist firm in Beverly Hills. 3 days after I started, their entire program got cut. And then, I was never actually, worked the protectee. So that for me was kind of a wake up call to, well, maybe there's life outside of Hollywood, And so I started looking nationally. Ended up getting an interview in Philadelphia to work a protectee in Philadelphia and New York, and ended up through a series of long interviews getting awarded the position.
I remember that.
Yeah.
And I had a couple other friends interview for that, and they did not get the position. So
yeah.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So I packed up shop, moved all the way to the East Coast. And, it was an amazing opportunity. A lot of fundamental changes in my life happened during that 3-year period of time where I was able to take and transition, because what makes us successful in event security, like you said, what makes us successful in residential security, award shows, all of those are different skill sets, and working full time with a embedded team to where you're working your entire work week for one protectee created a lot of challenges that I didn't actually anticipate there being, because you had that variety of working, protectee, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but the other days of the week you work somebody else.
Okay. So we're at about what, 2008, 9 now? 2007.
Late 2007.
All right. Then what happens?
So moved to New York, Philly, and start working that protectee. About 6 months into it, the senior team that was there was, they ended up being let go. And so the entire senior leadership team of this large detail, there was close to 30 people on this team. They were no longer there.
Dismissed. And
so they were looking for somebody to take over the senior position for the main protectee of this. And so as it happens, I was thrown into the pot, and I became the primary agent for a ultra high net worth individual. Worked for the private family office, and had a lot of lessons and a lot of different opportunities, and working in New York every week, and flying back and forth in between on the helo, and just seeing that family office side of things for the first time. That was really my first immersion into family office life.
Okay, which is a whole nother world from halls and walls.
Oh, for sure, sure.
And soft skills are key in this situation.
Soft skills are key. Understanding your protectee is key, but also the dynamics of a private family office are so important, because there are very few people in their world, and the people that are in their world better get along, or otherwise you become irrelevant real quick.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw that firsthand.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you look at the lessons that we learn, right, with those private family offices, and you see who's formally in charge, but who's really in charge. You see who controls the money, but who really approves the money, right?
Yep.
All those dynamics, like you have to assess it and you have to continually reassess it. And that's really what developed some of my fundamental pieces of tradecraft that I've implemented since then. My defining expectations, that I talk about all the time, literally was founded at that private family office, because the expectations of the 28 other people on the team other than me were completely different than the expectations for me. I was expected to be on 24/7. You call up at 3:00 in the morning, I was there.
As a manager,
2 minutes away.
As a manager, that's kind of your job.
Yeah, it was very eye opening. But it was also very rewarding because I had access to one of the world's most brilliant minds, who was on the board of directors for some of the most amazing schools in the world. Influenced entire industries, and I literally just sat there and learned every day for years from him.
One of the podcast guest questions that's big that I always like to ask, but it's pretty clear you're already talking about this. What role has personal growth, working on yourself, played in your life? And that's just been, I think, ingrained into everything you've done since day one. Would you agree with that?
100%. My goal since I first started has been to learn something new from somebody every single day. And that has paid dividends for me, whether it's the janitor or whether it's the CEO of one of the world's largest companies. I have learned equally impactful lessons from a plethora of individuals.
And the janitor you might learn something from the janitor that completely changes your life.
100%. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Okay. So now Philadelphia goes for a long time, and then that ends. Where do you go?
Yeah. So 2010, a couple of my buddies from LA said, "Hey, we're starting this new detail, looking for a couple people. They're making a transition. Are you interested?" And I was like, "Well, I'll check it out." At the time, I averaged 28 days a month, didn't have any time off. So my quality of life was very low, right? Time for any family things or anything like that was rough.
And that has been a theme for you. You're one of those guys that doesn't get home a lot. Luckily, it's better now. Now let's stop there for a second, because we're overlooking something very, very important. Let's back up and talk about starting your family. You were, because I've known your wife since she was 19 years old.
Yeah.
So she wasn't your high school sweetheart because she's younger than you. But where did you meet Charity, and how did that come about?
Met her in Spokane through some friends. It was actually, very, very informal meeting. We met in a Taco Bell parking lot, and literally, what are we, 20 years now? Almost 21 years since we met. Yeah, she's been there thick and thin, all the way through the progressions. We were married in 2010. And so when we were married, I was actually in between. I was just finishing in Philly, and then starting with the new position in Northern California.
And you were together and living with me while she was still in Spokane.
Yep.
And then she came down and started living in that tiny little room in my house on a freaking single little bitty bed, you guys. I remember you guys shared that bed.
She had her own place when she moved down. She rented from that lady with the Viper. I don't remember what her name was. But when she moved down to manage the gym.
Right.
And so she had her own place. But obviously, when I'm there for 4 hours, like she comes and sees me, did that. And good times.
So you get married, you have two beautiful kids, and their ages
4 and 9.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jax is 4 years old. Alex is 9.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just a beautiful family.
Heartbeat of my world.
Wonderful wife. Charity's amazing. I'm glad that I've been able to spend time with her when she comes to conferences. So I see her maybe once a year.
Yeah.
So very, very, and her and my girlfriend hit it off famously the first time they ever met. So that
Good
was really
people.
neat, and stayed in touch. Okay. Let's go forward now. So Philadelphia, Los Angeles, then what? Because this is when things start to take off. Now, are you continuing your education this whole time, or did you not start doing that until a little bit later?
So what I did was I went through as much training as I could afford because, up until 2011, nobody invested, no employer invested money in me. So I spent $43,000 of my own money in security specific training before anybody invested in me. I went through EMT school. I'd gone through obviously ESI. I'd gone through different weapons training schools, firearm schools, driving schools, and there's one other. But yes, did the consistent training as I could. So basically twice a year from 2002 to 2010, I had formal training opportunities that I paid for myself.
Okay. And now is this when you get and I don't want to say it a break because I don't feel like it was you lucked out. This is something you'd earned, but when was it that you got like the big job? You got a job for a multi-billion-dollar company.
So this was that job, okay, but it hadn't translated into that yet. I actually took a pay cut when I moved from Philly to San Francisco. Silicon Valley, I was making that move because I wanted to be closer to home. I'd gotten married that year, wanted to be able to visit family, more often. And so this job was brand new startup team. I actually didn't know who the protectee was until my first day of the job. Like we were that confidential. Nobody knew.
That's not that unusual, is it? I mean,
very unusual to actually start the job. Okay. Move all the way across country and not even know who your protectee is.
Okay.
I haven't heard of many, that have definitely gone through that full.
Okay. Because keeping everything close to the vest is a big thing in this industry.
Definitely.
And we have been hired to do jobs not knowing who we were protecting until the last minute. And it's kind of like, hey, we've got an NDA, blah, blah, blah. But nope, you got to keep it, keep it real close, almost to the point of paranoia, which I'm not crazy about. However, when you're talking about confidentiality and someone's privacy and security, it makes sense.
Definitely.
Hey, everybody. I just want to give a shout out to one of my newest sponsors, Executive Protection Institute. They're out of Virginia and New York. Jerry Hang, the owner, formerly Dr. Richard Kobetz. I went through Executive Protection Institute in 2003. I had been doing EP for probably 15 years and thought I was pretty hot to trot. I went through that 7-day course and realized that I didn't know anything about this industry. It changed my life, my perspective, and it helped me grow up as a man and as a professional. So if you're interested, it's personalprotection.com, executive protection industry, one of the greatest courses out there. There's some good ones. I only personally know from my experience that is one of the best, and it has continued to evolve over the years. So I hope that you will check it out, personalprotection.com, and we'll have some more stuff on all of my platforms to give you links and so forth. And I think we even get to offer a little discount if you mention Down and Dirty with Mike Julian or the Alive Active Shooter Survival Training Program, of which Jerry Hang is a certified instructor. So he's a big part of Alive and a great guy. So go check out EPI.
So I know that the purpose of your podcast is to talk about personal growth, right? And in Philly, there were several instances that fundamentally transformed the trajectory of my career. Every day I was with the client, and the client would talk, back and forth. And one of the things that shook me, to be perfectly honest, was the client said, "Caleb, I like you, but you need an education." Keep in mind, I quit school when I was 13. I didn't like school. I hated everything academic. Taking the test for my EMT was the hardest thing I had done in my entire life because I was not academic in the least bit.
And now one of the most brilliant minds and richest people on our planet is telling you, "Hey, bud, a little education might help."
Exactly. He said, "Caleb, what got you here isn't going to get you where you're going."
Yeah.
And I was like, where am I going to go? He's like, "There's big things in store for you." He asked me, "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" And I was like, "I've been working to get into this position my entire adult life. I want to be here in 5 years." And he's like, "There's more in store for you." And that shook me, to be perfectly honest. When he asked me where I saw myself in 5 years, I had no clue. I didn't have a life plan. I didn't have a structure. My entire goal was to wake up in the morning and be a bodyguard, right? At the end of the day, of that day, I went home and I was like, where do I see myself in 5 years? Like, is there more, right? That started, a fundamental change, because when I started looking at school, it was daunting. I applied for my first school and I didn't know the difference between any level of higher education. When I finally got the nerve to apply for a school, I received a rejection letter within, I think, a week. And it said, in order for you to take this course, you need to have completed a 4-year degree. Because I had applied not knowing the difference between graduate school and undergrad. I had applied for a graduate school program. That was literally my level of education at the time, right? And so I said, all right, I got to start with the basics. And so I went down to the community college and started meeting, with the individuals there. Head of the criminal justice program, because again, this is way before anything security really made it mainstream education. Looked at all the programs, and I said, hey, what do I got to do to get into your school? And they're like, well, you don't have a high school diploma, so you're gonna have to take 5 entry-level classes, non-credit classes. You can take those 5 classes. At the end of that, we'll assess whether or not your academic scores are good enough to enroll you. And at that point, you can be enrolled, and then you can start getting, 4 credit classes. I went home just completely devastated. I was like, I'm gonna spend, 5 classes. I was planning on taking 1 class per quarter, trying to work, 12 to 18 hour days and go to school was just, daunting. And so I went home, and then I went back a couple weeks later and met with him, and I was like, hey, you said that there was this prior learning assessment program. What could I potentially get credit for? He's like, I don't know, send me what you've done and I'll take a look at it and we'll do a full assessment. I was like, all right, cool. I was like, in the meantime, can I take a couple classes as a visiting scholar? Because I'd seen something on the website that said visiting scholars can take classes for credit without being enrolled. So I was like, all right, I'll take some visiting classes. So I asked him, he said, yeah, you can take up to 3 classes as a visiting scholar. I was like, all right, well, while we're doing this prior learning assessment, I'm just going to take classes. So I applied for criminal law and Psych 101. And spent the semester, going through those courses while they did the prior learning assessment. I'd done a ton of FEMA courses. I'd done my EMT. I had gone to ESI. And so all of the training components of it, they reviewed and they ended up awarding me 12 college credits for my prior learning that I invested.
Great.
With after I got an A- and a B+ for those 2 classes that I successfully completed. Went and got my transcript, and it showed that I had, 16 college credits from the prior learning assessment and the 2 classes I took. Well, I didn't know it, but I started doing research as I moved from Philly to, the Bay Area. And 4-year institutions, you need 12 regionally accredited college credits to be able to enroll without taking the entrance exam. So that got me past the requirement to have a high school diploma. That got me into the school because I had successfully completed those regionally accredited, programs. And then that's what led to me finally ending up being able to enroll in Southwestern, where I ended up getting my undergrad years later.
Okay, so another life-changing moment.
Caleb, I like you, but you need an education.
That's great. And as I recall, you were... I hope I don't embarrass you. You were like 160, 170 pounds dripping wet when you started in EP. Then at one point, didn't you get some advice from someone else that changed your life?
Yeah, one of my Southern California clients said, Caleb, I like you, but you're too damn small. I was fit. I was, working to, build muscle and everything like that. But I was a small guy at the time. I was 6'1" and, 160, 170 pounds. And I was like, man, I got to bodybuild, So for the next 10 years of my life, I took and I bulked up. And, Charity was making me food left and right, trying to swallow 5,000 calories a day to bulk. Well, I got all the way up until 2010 when I got married. I was 280 pounds. And which was hilarious because then I end up moving to California and working Silicon Valley clients. And, one day I come into the office and they're like, Caleb, I like you, but you're too damn big. I'm like, I give up.
Yeah.
I'm too small. I'm too big.
You can't win.
Exactly. I can't win.
So then basically you took the advice of your client, you started working out.
Yep.
You got too damn big. You took the advice of your client and you started leaning out.
Yep. Exactly.
So you're flexible. You do what's necessary.
Well, yeah, I'm motivated to do what it takes to keep the principal happy, and whether it's fitness, whether it's academics, whatever it is, I have attempted to scale my efforts to be in line with the expectations of the clients. Which
is a brilliant lesson number 17, I think we're up to. That is so important, man. Mm-hmm. Listen, in this world that we live in executive protection, and let me ask you this. I often say, and you probably know better than me because I haven't been an agent in many, many years, but would it be fair to say that 90% of our job is actual protection and the other, 10% of our job is actual protection and 90% is customer service, taking care of the client, creating an environment so that they can do, and help me with my percentages. Because again, it's been a long time since I've actually worked this. What would you say that is?
I'd say allocating a specific number would be difficult, but I would say is soft skills, customer service, is equally, if not more important in most cases than your hard skills.
Okay.
You need all of them, but it depends. Are you working a high risk detail?
Right.
Are you, the primary point of contact for the principal, or are you working on the peripheral?
Right.
All of those dynamics, depending, the teams that I've worked on are extremely large. I've been the one that the client reaches out to all the time, and I've been the one that listens, to whoever the decision maker is, So it's hard to give a specific number, but it's incredibly important to have the customer service skills, because when you look at the majority of the people that get fired for cause, typically it's not for their lack of protection skills.
Right.
It's for their lack of customer service, of soft skills, of being able to fit the culture of the environment you're being asked to work
Be
in.
the chameleon that literally becomes the environment, adapts to the culture, and fits in. Yeah, I like that. Okay, so Silicon Valley, work in a massive, like a big detail.
At the time, it was minute. I took a $45,000 pay cut to move from Philly to the Bay Area.
Because there's a small detail you moved to do.
Very, very small detail at the time, And I moved there because during the interview process, I loved the structure of it. I loved the framework. I loved, the guy that started it. I loved all the different dynamics. And I was like, wow, this guy's doing it right. This is incredible, And so when I was awarded the position, then I moved out there, worked the first 2 months, and it was basic shift work, working 12-hour shifts, and it was amazing because I had 4 days on, 4 days off, and that was the first time in my entire career that I had days off. Charity was a flight attendant at the time, so we would fly to whatever country, on her free flight tickets and vacation in between. It was crazy.
This is the first time in your career you've had work-life balance
ever. It lasted at least 2 months.
Well, you had those 2 months. That's good.
It was great. But after a couple months, they were like, hey, there's a couple more people on shift. So, we're going to need to make a supervisory position, and all the people that were there didn't want it. Nobody raised their hand. And, the CSO at the time was like, all right, if nobody wants it, we'll figure something out. After the meeting, I went up to him and I was like, hey, nobody raised their hand, but I just started. I'm new guy on the block, but if you need somebody, I'll raise my hand. He said, I'm not giving you a raise. And I was like, hey, teach me how to do it. That's all I ask.
Love it.
And that ended up being another crossroads in my career because, I didn't feel like I was qualified for the role, but I raised my hand and said, I'm willing to learn.
Okay. All right. So now tell me because you had what, 2 more major, not deployments, but details after that, correct? Well, let's jump to the next detail. What was that?
Well, this detail progressed from there. So as the threat rose, it progressed into different levels. So I progressed up from that initial shift lead till I was a detail lead over, the entire detail. And then I moved up into the, covert protection operations manager. That was a detail that I started the covert protection team for.
Now, is this the one that kept you going back and forth to South America, or was that the next detail?
No, that was two after that.
Two after that.
So there's been 5 details that I have been a part of or started myself from scratch and did a significant amount of work with.
And you took one that was, I don't know, this was before I think Elon and Amazon guy rose to be super duper rich. But what you then were with somebody that I think was one of the top 5 richest people in the world or something?
Fluctuated a lot, but in that range.
Okay.
In that range.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you took that detail just internationally massive.
Yes. I've done that with a couple different ones. I haven't worked for anybody worth less than, I don't want to say the dollar amount, but
a lot of money.
A lot, for a long time.
Well, now that's not true. You did moonlight for me a few times.
That's true.
And
that's true.
I'm way at the bottom of that group, but you did do some work for me.
Hey, you got to help a buddy out. Yeah. And it always helps to have that little extra cheddar. Living in Silicon Valley, keep in mind, I moved to Silicon Valley and I could barely afford rent. I'd taken a $45,000 pay cut because I wanted to make that move, and this was before the heyday of Silicon Valley. It was just like anywhere else. There weren't, this is before all of our big details blossomed. And so the compensation was not in line with the cost of living there. So I literally, drove a beater with a heater. I lived in a 500 square foot
apartment,
it's the back of somebody's house. Literally it was a sunroom that they had converted over. And I shared it, roomed with a buddy because he worked day shift, I worked night shift.
Right.
We did back and forth,
to running this massive detail.
Yeah. And so that progressing from there.
Now you ran a detail for one guy, but then didn't you, after that, was it you got the job running something for a massive corporation? Right?
Yeah. So I worked the private family office for 7.5 years. And that's what was really my greatest period of professional development, we'll call it, because there's a lot of things that happened during that time that fundamentally transformed my ability to be effective. I like to say when I started working for that CSO, I was like a, middle school football player. And, he took me and he showed me a path. And as I progressed up in the different levels, the path that he showed me, I started to grow and expand and be more sure of myself and confident and have greater levels of competence. Keep in mind, throughout this entire period, I was, still pursuing academics. I was still pursuing, every level of training. We had an extremely amazing training operation to where we had incredible amounts of training in all aspects of EP, real world simulations that are second to none in the private sector that I'm aware of. And all of that turned me into, a professional that I wanted to be, but I was still pursuing my goal to be a leader in the industry.
But you were still honing your skills, and you had some hiccups. You had some issues where you failed to be a leader in that your troops at some point were like, "Hey, what the fuck?"
Nobody told me that it's a different skill set to be a leader than it is to be an agent.
100%.
Everybody was my friend until 2 weeks after I got promoted. I raised my hand. I said, hey, if nobody else is going to do it, I'll go ahead and do it. I raised my hand, and then all of a sudden, I start feeling stabs in my back. I'm like, dude, you've been good with me. Why are you stabbing me in the back? You showed up 30 minutes late to a shift. All I said was, let's not let that happen, But nobody told me, when you're a leader, you can't make it personal,
No.
My entire problem was I was trying to get everybody on the team to operate at the same level of professionalism as I subscribe to myself. I hold myself to a higher standard. I always have, right? I want to learn from my mistakes. Well, not everybody in the industry is interested in doing that. Some people have greater levels of professionalism than I would have ever been able to achieve at that time. And they didn't need me telling them to do X, Y, Z just because I had the supervisory position.
Right.
And so it was through a series of, they felt like betrayals from the people on my team, people that I had hired, that I had brought on, that, completely stabbed me and almost lost my job several times, and it was at one point that I literally said, people are consistently, with these 3 different teams that I've created and built, consistently stabbing me. Why is that? And
was that the aha moment when you realized it's not them, it's me?
It's not them, it's me. It's I'm the professional that I want to be as an agent, but I'm not a leader. I have a manager title, but I am not someone that is leading people. And how do I make that transition? And so literally my CSO at the time sat me down and he said, Caleb, he's like, give you 2 choices. He said, I've talked to everybody on your team. I'll give you severance package, which was extremely generous, which was, incredibly amazing. He said, we can part, I'll help you get your next job. He said, or you have 30 days to get all these things in line in this performance improvement plan.
Yep.
Don't kid yourself. Nobody does that. And I looked at him and I was like, this isn't right. And I went home. It was crazy because I'd just come back from a huge international trip. So I went from the highest of highs, taking all these co-pro international and like all these successes. Then I got back, dead tired. First thing.
Oh, rookie. That's all right.
That.
We're going to keep rolling. I'm going right through that. Folks at home, always turn your phones off if you're going to get interviewed on a podcast. Do not cut that out. I want that in this. He still makes mistakes, even though he's a superstar.
That's right.
It's okay. Everyone does.
Everybody makes mistakes. Yeah. So performance improvement plan. So you got 30 days. Don't kid yourself. Right. And I went home after that and I said, all right, I need to put this on paper because I can't fathom why these people that I've hired, that I've given industry leading compensation, that I've given an amazing work-life balance, how are these people betraying me like this, right? And so I went home and I wrote down what they were saying. And then I wrote down the facts as I saw it, right? And then I wrote down a conclusion of, all right, this is how they came to this, because I wanted to better understand how each of these individuals found it in their head that just because they had done X, Y, and Z, and we're talking about hitters. I mean, we're talking about people in the intelligence community. We're talking about people at the highest level of the military, highest level of law enforcement. I mean, I had an incredible team. Keep in mind, I'm a nobody, right? I'm a nobody from nowhere. And I wanted to take in and say, all right, how are they shaping this? And that started my process of developing my leadership methodology. What is it that can take someone that isn't a leader and build them over time into becoming a leader that people aspire to work for, right? When in that next Tuesday, met with my CSO. On Monday, I had sent him over, I think it was 7 pages of notes to give him context to all the allegations. And after I met with him, I said, boss, I respect you, but this is wrong. I admit that I'm not a leader, but these are, taken out of context. Some of them are factually inaccurate. Here is, the facts, and you can talk to these people that will verify these facts. Because I went to everybody individually.
Okay. Bottom line, though, to be honest, you lost the respect of your
100%,
team.
100%.
And
I was a manager. I wasn't a leader, and I didn't know the difference.
Buddy, thank you. You just teed me up for something I say all the time, and I would say it on every single show if possible. The difference between a manager and a leader is managers tell people what to do and leaders inspire people to do what they need them to do. And I will be the first guy to admit I am a terrible, terrible leader. I'm a great general, but I'll scare you into doing what I need. But that's not the way to lead people. The way to lead people is out of respect, not fear, to inspire them to do what you need them to do and be the best versions of themselves so they do it great.
So I took that inspire, right? Because I thought, all right, who in my life has pulled out the best in me? It's the people that inspire you, right? And so what I said is, all right, my expectation for myself is that I do just that. I want to inspire performance rather than demand it. But I want to inspire that performance based on a metric that people can understand. Because you look at most leaders as they go through their leadership responsibilities, there's so much subjective application of expectations in this industry because we live in a world that is constantly changing. I tell people over and over again on my teams, the only thing we know for sure is everything we know will change.
Yeah.
Right. So that change is the only constant. And so that's where I, started building it out. My CSO, thankfully, got a better sight picture of what was going on. We started, addressing the issues one by one. He said, all right, if you want to do this 30-day thing, you're going to have to get a leadership coach and you're going to have to meet the requirements of the leadership coach. And so that began a transformational period of a couple of years of my life that I took what I learned, from that school of hard knocks and took what that leadership coach taught me over time and really started to develop, who am I as a leader? Who am I as a person? I'm in charge of this team, but who's really leading this team? Identify the expectations. First thing that I figured out. All right, I'm telling these people this is what you need to do, but I'm telling them what to do. I'm not telling them this is the expectation. There's a difference between saying go out and work this covert protection assignment and framing the expectations in a way that they can understand.
Yeah.
Identify the expectations, document the expectations.
Yes.
We took everything, put it into policies. I had them write it. I went through and edited it. I had them reread it. So not only do we identify what is it that the boss wants, we document it. We put it down on paper in language that they can understand. And then that worked for a while. And then I still had some people that were kind of flailing in the wind. And then I realized these people have been on the top of their game their entire career. And I'm the guy that wants to give you a raise rather than correct somebody. I didn't understand how important accountability was.
Oh.
And so that's when I added the third one of enforce the expectation.
Yes.
Because people need a carrot and they need a stick to stay motivated. We're humans, right?
Yeah.
We need to know what those bumpers are on either side of us. And as soon as I implemented those 3 steps, identify the expectation, document the expectation, and enforce the expectation, I found out in a short amount of time that because that step number 3 was there, I didn't have to use the enforcement. Identifying it and documenting it was so powerful with the knowledge that if there was not action in line with those expectations, it would be enforced.
Can I float a 4th one by?
Let's
see
do
what
it.
you think?
Let's do it.
And then reward when those expectations are met.
For
That
sure.
is what a leader does.
For sure.
Yes. And I'm shitty at that.
Well, and what I've done with White Glove is created an environment to where that is literally in our business plan. I added a 4th one, which is review. Identify what is the expectation, document what the expectations look like on paper, enforce the expectations, but review. So every single quarter, we're reviewing those expectations as part of our KPIs, as part of our QBRs, our quarterly business reviews, so that we can take those, key indicators that are important for each detail and use those to do the profit sharing that we do at White Glove to see what people are eligible for.
All right. Now, what you're describing is something that you and I are both a student of, and that's Traction, the book by Gino Wickman.
Yes. Amazing book.
And the EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. So now you've got this, let's go past the corporate stuff. You're in the corporate world forever, never, never. And before we get into your education, let's just talk about this. So you circle back and now you decide you're going to be an entrepreneur again. And honestly, I've known you for so long. I had no idea you had the entrepreneurial spirit and experience that you did. I don't think we ever talked about when you were 11 and started your company. I thought you were just a corporate guy. So then you go and say, I'm going to start my own company and it's going to be as elite and as tailor-made to my clients as possible. So it's very appropriate that you get into Traction and you have a scorecard, which is documenting your SOP, documenting everything, and then documenting, your failures based on what the expectations and goals are.
Yeah.
So now you start White Glove. So tell me about that.
Yeah. So, when I was the client for the last decade and a half, I looked at each of my vendors and I looked at what they could provide.
You got it for non-EP people. Explain what that means.
Yeah. So EP companies, it will work for corporations and for private family offices.
And when you're embedded with the private family, you are the client.
You're a full-time employee
to the vendors that are doing the fulfillment.
Exactly. So the majority of the people that worked on my teams were embedded contractors working for a security company, but they were embedded to my team.
Right.
So I would select who would come on board.
You were essentially working as an employee for that family.
I was 100% working as an employee for that family or that corporation. Right. And when I would select my vendors, I would look at, the entire spectrum of what is available on the market, who I know, who does what well, and everything like that. And over the course of managing those details, I developed an entire list of what I liked and what I disliked about all the vendors. But I also identified a gap in the market that has been created in the last couple of years because so many small companies have been bought by larger corporations that the boutique shops that used to provide high quality, high level service to family offices and corporations have been bought up. And now they're part of the corporate bureaucracy, which is incredibly effective at bringing consistency on their level, incredibly effective, producing revenue for the shareholders. As a client, I wanted somebody to be my vendor that was going to be responsive. I wanted somebody that would bring innovation. I wanted somebody that would bring something to the table that I didn't already have.
Got it.
And so what I ended up, looking at is, all right, what are the companies on the market? And thankfully, through my networking, through my associations and everything, I was able to take a look at all the executive protection providers in the industry, and I was able to say, all right, who does it well, who does it okay, and who does not do what I consider as acceptable. And I identified that there's a huge gap in the companies that were the Rolls Royce of the industry, right? There's some companies that do a great job, but as they grow and as they develop, they get too big. When they get too big, they lose the responsive customer service, the responsive touch, that one-on-one connection that I wanted from my vendors,
Sure.
And so I looked at starting up White Glove. I was like, all right, I know that I am a visionary, and I have lots of ideas and have developed, programs for many things that have worked out extremely well. But I wanted to bring somebody on board to bring that vision to life, And so I started thinking, who could I bring on? Because I wanted to do this thing called profit sharing. Nobody in the executive protection industry on the vendor side of the house did profit sharing with the agents on the ground. And I had worked my way through every single level. And the only time that I got stocks or, reasonable bonuses was when I was a full-time employee, because that's what everybody in the industry has pursued throughout their career. And I was like, why is that? Why can't a company come along and prioritize the agents who are right next to the principal all the time, prioritize them from a training perspective, prioritize them from a profit sharing perspective, but inspire performance?
Okay.
And so that's literally the foundation for starting White Glove. And I said, all right, I'm going to inspire performance by training them, but also creating an expectation and accountability. So we went out and we found a software system, there's an employee management software system that we could use to gauge how much each employee brings value to the detail that they're on.
Okay.
I've used this on my last 3 details, as on the client side of things, just to gauge how my employees were doing. But Jerry Jacobs, who was in charge of the governor's detail and worked his way into the private sector, in Silicon Valley.
Great
I talked
guy.
to him.
Great guy. I think we were both at his wedding.
Yeah.
Super good guy. Love the guy. That was a great choice.
Definitely, and he came on and he brought that stability that I wanted. I wanted to have somebody that would be the unbiased arbiter of the truth, somebody that could do the assessments on the agents and could evenly hand out the bonuses, because I truly want this to be a game changer. I want people every quarter, when they get or don't get the bonus, I want them to know why. Want them to know, how is it that I can improve as a professional, right? Because nobody ever incentivized that for me. I became a better professional by some people that inspired me, such as my former CSO, but I didn't have a path forward. And so I wanted to create a path. So what we've done is we've taken a 3-year training plan, built it into each position. So the first year.
Okay, hold on. Let me stop you for a second.
All right.
I don't want you to give away your entire business model, dude.
Yeah.
But let me just say something. Your energy has gone through the roof because of the passion that you have for this new company and for taking care of your people.
Oh, it's exciting.
I don't know if anybody else noticed that, dude. You just doubled your energy. Your passion is exploding. That is really, really cool because it's very clear as a visionary. You've got this vision. I don't know how many times you've stayed up at night, but you've clearly thought this through. And I want to commend you for your passion for taking care of your people, which truly shows what a leader you are. So that leadership coach worked, buddy. I'm going to tell you that right now. I can't even
dividends.
Your energy is just like, wow, that's really cool. Okay, now I'm sorry to cut you off, but we cannot do this all day. So I'm gonna steer you in a new direction.
Perfect.
But thank you for that. And is there any? Let's cap the I'll give you a couple more minutes. Let's cap the white glove thing. Give us a little bit higher view of the of white glove protection now. And then I want to circle back to your education because that is just one of the most inspirational things to me is dropping out of school when you're 13 to where you ended up. So let's talk a little bit more about white glove and then let's go to that.
Yeah. With white glove, embedded protection only. We're only focused on details that are embedded with corporations, private family offices. Nothing, we don't do ad hoc work. We don't do, protective intelligence. We don't rely on strategic partners for all of that. We're solely focused on doing what I love to do, and that is building and growing some of the best teams in the industry.
And you, in the name alone, you have pigeonholed yourself. You
100%.
You'll be held to an extremely high standard by your clients, because if you don't stand up to or live up to your own actual company name, you would be full of shit.
Exactly.
You have really put yourself in a corner, and that's a good motivator too. But I have no doubt you would have done that no matter what you called it. Okay. Well, and I'm excited to see how things are progressing with White Glove, and congratulations on starting your own company. I personally believe you are where you belong. You've got an entrepreneurial spirit. You've got a passion for people, not just your clients, but also the people that work for you, which shows that you're a true leader. Okay, let's go back to your education. You stopped essentially learning. You stopped going to school at 13 years old. Then you started going back. Tell me, in short terms, now where you have progressed. You got a degree, you got a bachelor's, whatever. Then you went on to what?
Yeah. Started out when I was 29, going back to school. And then I spent 11 years pursuing my academic path. I knew that where I was going, I needed to develop a foundation that was firm. And so what I did was I went out and I looked on LinkedIn and I said, all right, what do chief security officers of Fortune 50 companies have on their resume? Most of them are federal agents, a lot of law enforcement, a lot of military, but all of them had education from top tier schools. And so I said, all right, I'm going to apply at the best school in the world. And if they reject me, I'll go on to number 2. And so as it turns out, I was able to, finish my undergrad at Southwestern in security management. Progressed from there and went to Stanford through their International Security Graduate Program, which was an incredible opportunity to learn from, Dr. Perry, former Secretary of Defense, just all of these amazing instructors, professors that, I was living close to the Stanford campus at the time. So it worked out to be an incredible opportunity just for me to immerse in geopolitical politics in this entire thing. It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life, because I was Stanford School of Engineering, that I was enrolled in. And I am obviously not an engineer. Math is
terrible
to this day. Yeah.
Sucks.
Horrible.
Hate it.
Exactly. But through the help of, many people who invested in my, academic pursuit, I was able to, finish that graduate program through Stanford, and then moved on to Johns Hopkins because they had the full master's program in global security studies. And that just opened my eyes on the geopolitical implications of security in the broader world. And so that's really shaped my impression of security in the world. And as I've worked in different parts of the world, I better understand how security impacts water sources and the future for populations and, so many different things that, my mind was opened up to that I never would have been able to fathom.
So you've now got more degrees than a thermometer. That's pretty impressive. So what level are you at? Is that a master's?
Master's in Global Security Studies from Johns Hopkins University. Yes.
That's pretty awesome, dude.
Which is absolutely amazing because the man that inspired me was on the board of directors for Johns Hopkins University.
That is so bitchin'. I love the story. I love, because dude, I've known you, and frankly, you got a great family. You got you're the family you came from, the family you created. You've worked hard. You've got a great career. I'm thinking, how is my bro going to fit into this whole theme of coming from whatever, facing adversity, challenges, anything, and then rising above? But that is something I did not even know about you, dude. I didn't know you left. You dropped out at 13. You don't have a high school diploma.
Still to this day.
But you got a fucking master's degree.
Yep.
That's a hell of a lesson number 37, I think.
And, I was the odd man out of every room that I walked in. I moved to LA and everybody I was working with was in law enforcement because that's what it took at the time to get your CCW, right? So working with all of them, I was not ushered into any position because of my network or because of the good old boys network or anything like that.
Just hard work. Just
plain hard work and building on those relationships and investing in the people around me, because I was, 100% discriminated against for the first 10 years of my career because I wasn't something before. And it was actually a fundamental moment in my life where I looked, and there were people saying, how can you come up with a covert protection team when you're a nobody from nowhere? And then I realized the fact that I'm a nobody from nowhere leaves me with a clean slate.
100%. Yes. See, that's important. I want to stop and focus on that for a second. One of the, I could go on, I could talk about this a lot, but I'm not going to go too deep. Having that clean slate, having no prior programs that you may need to unprogram or deprogram is a really big advantage in many, many ways. Now, having skills from prior law enforcement, military, whatever, is great because some of those skills transfer and are applicable.
Definitely.
But you came from no knowledge and built it from the ground up. So you had a very, I want to say not clean, but a very sterile journey coming from nothing with no outside influences to
nobody
twist
helped
you to go into where you are today. Okay, now let me shift gears for a second. I'm going to ask you some life questions. How do you practice gratitude in your life?
Gratitude for me is a lifestyle. You can make a choice to be grateful for somebody, or you can live a life that shows your gratefulness, the people around me, I can be grateful for their investment in my life, or I can show them how grateful I am. Some of the people that have invested in me over the years have been the people that I have been able to give back through, whether it's, contracts or referrals or positions or whatever, And so to me, gratitude, is a two-way street. But it's 100% a lifestyle. You can talk about it all you want, but until you actually live it.
I've never heard it described that way. I like that because I think of gratitude as moments in time. Like when I'm feeling, and I've said this before, negativity, jealousy, envy, all the 7 deadly sins, none of those can exist in the same space as gratitude. Because when you change your mind to being grateful, those are not in that space.
Yeah.
Actually living a life of gratitude means, and honestly, I believe that about you. I've never known you to talk shit about other people. I've never known you to put people down. I've never known you to be jealous, to be greedy. None of those things I have known. And now that makes sense because that's the life you've lived. And you live a very clean life. You've never drank. You every once in a while, if it's okay to say, we have a cigar if we're out somewhere, but you're not a smoker. You're not a drug user. I totally get that about you, dude. And that makes perfect sense. And that is, I just learned something. I never thought of gratitude as being a lifestyle. I've just thought about it as being moments in time. I would love to adopt a gratitude lifestyle. I got a long way to go and a lot of self-work to get there, but now I have goals. And I wrote goals down very early on because you said early on in your life, you would set goals.
Yeah.
What books or quotes or mentors can you credit with some of your success?
Oh boy. One of my professors at Stanford said, fail often to succeed sooner.
Ooh.
And that it's actually more controversial than I thought once I started doing research on his statement. But to me, fail often means identify where the failure points are, push yourself out of your comfort zone towards the failure point so that you can succeed often. Pursuing academics, way outside of my comfort zone. Going to Stanford, way outside of my, I had no, 4.5% of people get accepted there, Johns Hopkins, same story, it's a little higher percentage. Getting outside of that comfort zone and not being afraid to fail. I've had the honor of managing some of the most incredible teams in the industry. And it's not because of Caleb. It's because the people around me had the confidence that I would be able to scale to whatever position they were asking me to fill.
And spoken like a true leader, you give all the credit to your people and don't take it yourself.
Because they're the ones doing the work,
yeah.
Right? Like you can lead a horse to water, but if those people on those teams weren't incredible human beings, we weren't able to take that constructive conflict of thought and mesh it all together and create solutions that people have never created before, then we would have fallen flat on our face and everybody would have.
Yeah. I have my own personal story in reference to that. My own aha moment. I was failure phobic because my dad was such a hard ass. If I did something wrong, he would kick the shit out of me. Not always, but he would make me feel real dumb or kick the shit out of me. So I was deathly afraid to do anything wrong. Well, if you don't try something, you can't fail.
Yep.
And then you won't feel like you're going to get the shit kicked out of you. I read a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki.
Yep.
And he basically said, I don't know if he was talking about sales or whatever, but he said, look, it's a numbers game. Every failure you have, you're one step closer to your success. So to your point, get those failures out of the way because you're going to succeed at some point.
Yep.
Go ahead and get those failures and be grateful for those failures because it made you that much closer to your success.
Oh boy, I am. I have failed in this industry in the most epic ways possible. I was the guy that before you could even post before social media, I posted in a Yahoo chat group, a picture that paparazzi had taken me with an A-list celebrity. And I was like, hey, out of school and, hitting the, whatever I posted, it was a closed group.
Yeah.
Somebody sent that to my boss and I got canned.
Oof.
And it took me about 15 years, but I went to the individual that sent that to my boss at the time.
Thank you.
And I said, thank you.
Yeah.
Because that fundamentally transformed my mindset on NDAs because it became that much more important. Getting eliminated from my position was not fun, but learning to keep my mouth shut was very important.
Yeah. That's a pretty strong lesson. What about books?
Boy, my books have gone through the roof in the last year and a half since I decided to start White Glove.
What book has made the biggest impact on your life, your career?
Yeah, Dale Carnegie's book.
Which one? When Friends Influence People.
Yeah. When Friends and Influence People. Okay. Just for the foundation.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Do you have any favorite hobbies that keep you sane? Now, I know you do, but I want to hear. Oh, by the way, let me just also say that your entrepreneurial spirit, you're not just Caleb Gilbert, the EP guy. You have multiple ventures. Dude, as long as I've known you, didn't you and I get our car salesman license so we could start buying and selling cars like 15 years ago, right?
Yep.
We did that. You've owned multiple kick-ass motorcycles, multiple kick-ass hot rods, badass trucks. Now you're getting a freaking new, EV Hummer. You built your own storage units.
Yeah.
I mean, tell us a little bit shortly about your side hustles.
Yeah. Well, one thing that nobody ever told me when I first started in this industry is you're not going to have a pension, and that's the vast majority of the people I worked with in my early years. They were working is this is their second gig. They had worked their career in law enforcement, military, government, and they had their pension. I realized early on that I wasn't going to have a pension, so I needed to figure out a way to prepare myself for when I couldn't be out in the field working. And so I started investing in 401k and maxed out everything I could on there. But in 2013, I decided to transition towards the 25-75 model, to where I lived off of 25% of my income and invested 75%.
Wow.
And what that did is it created the opportunity for me to take the money that I was making. I didn't start out with that. I had to work my way up to that because, we were living in expensive areas. But as I got raises, as I was, awarded stock options or different things, then I was able to invest. It started in real estate, bought up some, raw land, and then, have progressed from there. But that application of prioritizing the investment, rather than, sure, I went through my years of, when I was with you, I think I was $163,000 in credit card debt when I moved to Philly because I had Ducatis and ZX10s and a Porsche and, everything under the sun. And, when I moved to Philly, I sold everything. I bought a $3,000 beater with a heater, and I paid off all my credit card debt in those 3 years.
And for the record, can you agree with me that running up credit cards for toys is not a good plan?
Not
when
a
you're
good
starting
idea.
out?
Yeah.
Maybe to invest in yourself, like your education or training, but let's not get lots of credit card debt for toys.
Exactly. No, there's absolutely no reason for that, And so what I started to do was transition to a point to where I could invest, So that opened up opportunities. The storage units has been an incredible opportunity. To be able to, build up, 25,000 square foot of indoor storage space for, RV boats.
25,000?
25,000 square feet.
Was that your first ones, or is that combined?
We had phase one in 2019.
Yeah.
Then we built the first 4 buildings, and then we doubled our size in 2022.
And if I'm not mistaken, you built these yourself.
I did with help, obviously.
Of course, but this was you being the general contractor and doing a lot of work.
Yep. I had the boys there to help, and then we brought in obviously, people that actually do that for a living. But yeah, no, I mean, as it turns out, if you can manage, you can manage.
Yeah. Okay.
Project plan's a project plan, whether you're talking about securing the client's residence or building storage units.
Well, I just wanted to get that in there because I think that's important. Side hustles are good. I've always had them. I enjoy doing them, and you've had them, and you've been very, very, very successful. So as far as like hobbies, now you've got this beautiful vacation home in Montana, right?
That's my grandma's. That's not mine.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's my grandma's.
Oh, well, either way,
but she's amazing for buying
great pictures from your vacation last week. So
yes, definitely. No, that's incredible, and can't thank her enough for that because she's a rock star.
But your hobbies: boating, fishing, hunting. What do you do?
Yeah, definitely enjoy boating with the family. I firmly believe everybody needs a bad habit, and cars is mine.
I share that habit with you.
Yeah. I saved for several years, and when I was 9 years old, we lived in a house, we paid $150 for rent. And my uncle had taken my dad out in a car that he had just, restored. And they went out and they came back and they were so excited, because they'd raced his car and smoked them and all this. And I was like, if I ever buy a car like that, I know I made it.
That was one of my questions. I was going to ask you what moment, or have you had that moment where you can actually say to yourself, I've made it? And normally it comes from something that we see and aspire to as a young person. Mine was, I've got my own. So what was yours? What car did you buy when you went, I've made it?
I bought that car.
You bought the same car?
The same car that I saw when I was 9 years old. My uncle said, hey, I'm not able to drive it as much anymore. Wanted to go to a good family. I said, I'll save. I saved up for several years and I bought that car.
What is that car?
1963 Impala SS.
Oh, fuck.
With air conditioning and cruise control in an SS.
Top of the line, luxury sports car.
Incredible vehicle.
That is a sexy vehicle.
Feels like you're floating on a cloud when you drive it. Every time I drive it, I'm grateful, because I sit there and sure, I'm driving a car, right? You're burning gas. But in my mind, I'm a 9-year-old kid looking up to my uncle and my dad with that thrilled look in their face. And I'm like, wow, this is cool.
Congratulations on that.
Well,
You know what's funny? A car was mine too. Seriously, when I bought my most recent car, that was one I looked at as a little boy and went, oh, someday. Now it's kind of silly because that really doesn't define us, but that was the little boy feels like he made it.
And let me clarify, like, I don't think that I've made it. You know, success is a pursuit over time. You know, to me, success is my family. To me, success is investing in the people around me. Success to me is consistency over time, you know? So I don't think that I can put a dollar amount on it. I had financial goals by the time I was 40 to reach a certain milestone. I was completely bewildered actually that I made those goals because they were so pie in the sky, you know, when I was younger. But money has never been important to me. People inspire me. People excite me. The people around me are my world.
Fuck yeah. I love that, man. All right. Last question. I was going to ask, what would you tell younger Caleb, but you've already pointed out so many lessons that you have acknowledged and learned from. I think we already know. What would you tell in, I don't know, 1 to 3 sentences, short as you can? What would you tell a young person that wants to get into this? This is not necessarily a glamorous, easy industry. It's not an easy job. You miss out on family time, on relationships, sleep, food. You know, it's hard work. That's why I don't do it anymore. I'm too fucking old, right? I can't handle that shit. I'm not tough enough anymore. What would you tell a young person? What lessons would you want to impart upon a young person that wants to get into this, or maybe even an old person that wants to get into this industry? Somebody that's looking at this going, I want to do that. What would you tell them?
2 things. God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them proportionately.
Brilliantly said.
At the end of the day, the people around us are what creates success or failure. So take care of the people around you. I can't tell you how many times that I would sit in a GSOC or a command center looking at cameras with people, and we just banter back and forth. And all of a sudden, these people are the senior directors of the largest corporations in the world.
Yep.
And these are people that I grew up with. You know, you don't know where somebody's going to go in their life. So just take care of everybody around you. You know, I have tried, whether I like someone or I didn't like someone, I have tried to find something in common with everybody because your people, the network around you is truly what shapes your future. You know, choose your rooms wisely that you walk into. Some people are in this industry for all the wrong reasons.
Yes.
Identify that early. If somebody is a Yahoo, identify that so that you can subscribe to the culture and values and discipline and inspiration from the people that are moving in the direction that you see yourself aligning with.
I love it. I love it. By the way, I want to give you a gift from one of my sponsors. Love these guys out in Gastonia, North Carolina. Frank and Alex Stewart.
Good guys.
Great guys. You know who they are.
Yeah.
Love them. Great sponsor, great products. I love their Everyday Armor t-shirt. But they were kind enough to give me bulletproof koozies to give to my guests. So I got the Premier Body Armor right there, and this will hold. I know you're not a drinker, but you do drink Diet Coke. So this will keep your Diet Coke not only cold, but also protected from bullets.
Love it.
So I'd like to give you
Love
that.
it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Awesome. I still need to get their backpack for my kids for school.
Yes, that's a great idea. The bulletproof backpack is very, very cool.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much.
You bet. My man, I appreciate you so much being on my show. We talk frequently. We only get to see each other a couple times a year at conferences, which is a damn shame. As we get older and more successful and work less, hopefully we can do more of that.
All right.
I still want to hang out at your grandma's house in Montana.
Let's do it.
And I'm hoping to do that. And I just really appreciate this. This has been pretty much all about Caleb and the executive protection world. So this will probably be, you know, that audience will probably just eat this up because I think there was so many lessons to be learned from your journey. And I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you.
Appreciate you, brother.
All right, brother. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Until next time, please connect with me on your favorite social media platform where you can follow me on my personal journey, including the fun stuff I do with people close to me to celebrate our lives and our victories.